Okay, today what we're going to do is be looking at the Pythagoras theorem. Now, the Pythagoras theorem is a theorem that was come up with a couple of thousand years ago. And what it says is that in a right angle triangle, so you have to have a triangle that's got a right angle in it, the hypotenuse, now the hypotenuse is the longest side of that triangle. It's the side that's opposite the right angle. So that in this example here, C would be the length of the hypotenuse. The length of the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the other two sides squares. So in this one, we'd have a squared plus b squared is going to be equal to c squared. Now we can use this in all sorts of different ways. This is used in navigation, it's used in surveying, it's used in building. You can imagine that this might be a house, and we know the length of the house. We know how high we want the house to be, and we want to be able to calculate the angle of the roof. It can also be used in buildings to make sure that we end up with right angled. We end up with sides that actually go vertical to the floor. Because if we know what A, B, and C are, we can calculate to check that we actually have a right angle. So let's actually now use this with an example. So what we're going to do is get rid of the A and B and C, and we're going to say, okay, well, we want to calculate the length of this side here. Now you need to know two lengths. So let's say in this triangle that the vertical height is 6 meters. The horizontal width is 8 meters. We still don't know the length of the hypotenuse, so we're going to give it a label, a variable. Now in this example, we can say that 6 squared plus 8 squared is going to be equal to c squared. And we can then calculate the length of our hypotenuse. So let's write that down. If we say 6 squared plus 8 squared, that's going to be equal to c squared. Now 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. And we know that's equal to c squared. 36 plus 64 would give us 100. So we can say 100 is equal to c squared. And we can then calculate the value of c just by taking the square root of both sides. So you remember the inverse operation of a square is the square root. So if we take the square root of 100, that's going to be equal to c. And therefore we know that c is going to be equal to 10, because 10 times 10 is equal to 100. Now there is a square root button on your calculators as well. So remember, you don't have to actually know the square root calculations. But you can see that in this triangle, the length of the hypotenuse in a right angle triangle must be 10 meters, because our vertical height is 6, our horizontal length is 8, and therefore this length here, the hypotenuse, is going to be 10.